Spending so much time alone had turned Chloe's imagination into a deep, dark forest. It was a magical place to escape to, and so much more thrilling than real life. Chloe had used her exercise book to write a story about a girl who is sent to a school, loosely based on her own, where all the teachers were secretly vampires. She thought it was much more exciting than boring equations, but Mother clearly didn't agree. "If it was your mathematics book, why does it contain this repulsive horror story?" said Mother. This was one of those questions when you weren't supposed to give an answer. "No wonder you did so poorly in your mathematics exam. I imagine you've spent the time in the class writing this drivel. I'm so disappointed in you, Chloe." Chloe felt her cheeks smarting with shame, hung her head. She didn't think her story was drivel, but she couldn't imagine telling Mother that. "Don't you have anything to say for yourself?" shouted Mother. Chloe shook her head. For the second time in one day, she just wanted to disappear. "Well, this is what I think of your story," said Mother, as she tried to rip up her exercise book. "Please don't," stammered Chloe. No, I'm not paying your school fees for you to waste your time on this rubbish. It's going in the bin." The book was obviously harder to rip than Chloe had expected, and it took a few attempts to make the first tear. However, soon the book was nothing more but confetti. Chloe bowed her head, tears welling up in her eyes as her mother dropped all the pieces into the bin. "Do you want to end up like your father, working in a car factory? If you concentrate on your maths and don't get distracted by silly stories, you have a chance of making a better life for yourself. Otherwise, you'll end up wasting your life like your father. Is that what you want? Well, how dare you interrupt me?" shouted Mother. Chloe hadn't realised this was another one of those questions when you aren't meant to answer. "You better back up your ideas, young lady." Chloe wasn't sure what she meant, but it didn't seem like the best time to ask. Mother left the room, dramatically slamming the door behind her. Chloe slowly sat down on the edge of her bed. She buried her face in her hands. She thought of Mr. Stink sitting on his bench, only the Duchess for company. She wasn't homeless like him, but she felt homeless in her heart. Chapter 5. Abandoned Starbucks. Monday morning, the first proper day of the Christmas holidays, a day Chloe had been dreading. She didn't have many friends she could text or email or SMS or Facebook or Twitter or whatever, but there was one person she wanted to see. By the time Chloe got to the bench, it was raining heavily. She wished she'd at least paused to pick up an umbrella. "The Duchess and I weren't expecting to see you again, Chloe," said Mr. Stink. His eyes twinkled at the surprise, despite the rain. "I'm sorry I ran off like that," said Chloe. "Don't worry, you're forgiven," he chuckled. Chloe sat down next to him. She gave the Duchess a stroke, and then noticed that the palm of her hand was black. She superstitiously wiped it with her trousers. Then she shivered as a raindrop ran down the back of her neck. "Oh no, you're cold," said Mr. Stink. "Shall we take shelter from the rain in a coffee shop establishment?" Yes, good idea," said Chloe, not sure if taking someone quite so stinky into an enclosed space really was a good idea. As they walked into town, the rain felt icy, almost becoming hail. When they arrived at the coffee shop, Chloe peered through the steamed-up glass window. "I don't think there's any room to sit down," she said. Unfortunately, the coffee shop was full to the bursting, with Christmas shoppers trying to avoid the cruel British weather. "We can but try," said Mr. Stink, picking up the Duchess and attempting to conceal her under his tweed jacket. The tramp opened the door for Chloe, and she squeezed herself inside. As Mr. Stink entered the pleasing aroma of the freshly brewed coffee, he kneeled over and died. His own special smell replaced it. There was a silence for a moment. Then panic. There's all the people with all the smelling Mr. Stink. People started to running towards the door, clutching serviettes over their mouths as makeshift gas masks. "Abandon Starbucks!" screamed a member of staff as his colleagues immediately stopped making coffee or bagging muffins and ran for their lives. "It seemed to be thinning out a little," announced Mr. Stink. Soon they were the only ones left in the shop. Maybe smelling this bad has its advantages, thought Chloe. If Mr. Stink's super smell could empty a coffee shop, what else could it do? Maybe he could clear the local ice rink of skaters. Or could she have done it herself? Or they could go to Alton Towers together and have a queue or a single ride. Better still, she could take him on his smell inside the school one day, and if was particularly stinky, the headmistress would have to send everybody home and she would have the day off. "You take a seat here, child," said Mr. Stink. "Now, what would you like to drink?" "A cappuccino, please," replied Chloe, trying to sound grown up. "I think I'll have one too," Mr. Stink snuffed behind the counter and staring openly at things. "Righty-ho, 2 cappuccinos coming up right here." The machine hissed and spat for a few moments, then Mr. Stick pottered back over to the table with 2 mugs of dark liquid. One closer inspection, it appeared to be some kind of black slime, but Chloe was too well brought up to complain and pretended to sip whatever it was he had conjured up. She even managed an almost convincing lovely. Mr. Stink stirred his solid liquid with a silver spoon. He pulled out from his breast pocket. Chloe stole a glance at it and noticed it was monogrammed with 3 little letters engraved on the handle. She tried to get a better look, but he put it away before she could see what the letters were. What could they mean? Or was this simply another item Mr. Stink had during his career as a gentleman thief? "So, Miss Chloe," said Mr. Stink, breaking her train of thought, "it's the Christmas holidays, isn't it?" He took a sip of his coffee, holding his mug between his fingers. "Why aren't you home decorating the tree with your family and wrapping presents?" "Well, I don't know how to explain." No one in Chloe's family was good at expressing their feelings to her mother. Feelings were at best an embarrassment, at worst a sign of weakness. "Just take your time, young lady." Chloe took a deep breath, and it all came flooding out. What started off as a stream soon became a rushing river of emotions. She told him how her parents argued all the time, and how once she was sitting on the stairs when she heard her mother shout, "I'm only staying for you. I'm not staying for you. I'm only staying for the girls." How her little sister had made her life a misery. How nothing she did was ever good enough. How if she brought some little bowl and had made a pottery class, her mother would put it back in the cupboard, never to be seen again. However, if her little sister brought any piece of artwork home, however awful it was pride of place, in the glass cabinet, as if it was the Mona Lisa. Chloe told Mr. Stink how her mother was always trying to force her to lose weight. Up until recently, Mother had described her as having puppy fat, but once she turned 12, Mother rather cruelly started calling it flab, or even worse, blubber, as if she was some species of a whale. Perhaps Mother was trying to shame her into losing weight. In truth, it only made Chloe more miserable, and more miserable only made her eat more, filling herself up with chocolate, crisps, cake. She felt like giving up and not even needing a hug. She told Mr. Stink how she wished her dad would stand up stand up to her mother sometimes, and how she didn't find it easy making friends, as if she was so shy. How she only really liked making up stories, but it made her mother so angry, and how Rosamond ensured that every day at school was an absolute misery. And there we're going to leave it until later. Bye.